Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dana Faruqi, class of 2003, and I am a new member to the President's Advisory Council on the Arts. I'm so delighted to be here, joined by two of my fellow council members, Tony Gerber, class of 86, and Olga Votis, class of 91. We are thrilled to be here together with all of you today to celebrate Arts at Brown. Thank you for coming. We're honored to briefly introduce today's forum, Looking Back, Looking Forward, a brief history of the arts at Brown. Today, we will hear from three faculty members who have shaped Brown arts landscape for decades through their extraordinary research, teaching, and contributions to their fields. You can read all of their bios online, so we'll just offer a few highlights by way of introduction. First, I am so pleased to introduce Richard Fishman, Professor Emeritus of Visual Art and former Director of Brown's Creative Arts Council. Professor Fishman is a sculptor and designer whose work is represented in numerous collections, including the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden, the Smithsonian Institution, the B'nai B'rith Museum in Washington, D.C., the Jewish Museum in New York, the Rose Arts Museum at Brandeis University, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. At Brown since 1965, he has been instrumental in creating interdisciplinary initiatives and courses exploring the connections between the arts, science, and technology. He was also the founding director of the Perry and Marty Granoff Center for the Creative Arts, where we gather today from 2010 to 2015. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dana. My name is Tony Gerber. I'm the class of 86, and to say that Arts at Brown impacted my life would be a major understatement. I met my wife in a section of Jim Barnhill's acting class, and 40 years later, we're still working together and raising a family and making art. I'm honored to introduce Julie Adams Strandberg, distinguished scholar, lecturer, Emerita of Theater Arts and Performance Studies. Now, Julie told me earlier that in the dance world, to use a first name is an honorific. And Martha Graham, for example, was always Martha to her dancers, that she didn't need a last name. So I'm going to refer to Julie as Julie. Julie is a dancer, an educator, and a scholar. Her practice is informed by over 50 years of experience as a choreographer, performer, as a pioneer in arts education, community engagement, and as an arts administrator and producer. She is the co-founder of Dancing Legacy and co-founder of Artists and Scientists as Partners. Julie has also served as co-artistic director of the New York State Summer School of the Arts School of Dance and as a consultant for the Miracle Project New England. The dance program, which began in 1969, and if I'm not mistaken, in the PE department of Pembroke College, is today a track within theater and arts and performance studies. Olga.
And thank you, Tony. I'm Olga Votis, and I'm another member of the Arts Council Advisors, and I serve on the academic subcommittee. The first person I met when I was tasked with what I didn't understand what it was, in fact, Professor Butch Rovan, professor of music, who is coming. Butch was the first academic contact and the inaugural fellow of the Brown Arts Initiative. In fact, for music, but also for what it might look like. So the building that you see and the, there you are.
Thank you.
So Butch was one of the first ones to start the BAI initiative. You then promptly went on sabbatical. You went and very appropriately wrote a symphony, and he is one of the world's experts on digital composition and electronic music, as well as, if you like, the more traditional arts. It's they call it music and multimedia composition. I think it's a lot more, because what it really means is you have to tie the past and the traditions that we have to the possibilities of the future, and out of that imagine a sound that represents who we are. And I think it's just incredible how you manage that. He also develops in his free time little devices that conductors can put on and create electronic music just like that. So I would say it's a little miracle making, and it's fascinating research for those of you who are interested in the sort of the watershed between who we are and what we want to be. You have award-winning work with custom design interactive systems for musical performance and visual media. You focus particularly on the human gesture, from what I understand, in interactive performance, including music composition, software, and hardware design. And finally, this semester, you're teaching a class called Song and Songwriting and a seminar in electronic music and real-time systems, which I will leave to you to ask him what that is. Thank you. And you will now hear from the big Supremo, Avery Fisher-Hoffman.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Burton. No, just joking. So Kate Burton was meant to moderate this amazing group of faculty members and was called away last minute to Arkansas to film a movie. Got special dispensation to do so. So she is on a plane right now to do, I'm sure, a brilliant role. So my apologies that I am not Kate Burton, but I am Avery Willis Hoffman, and I'm the artistic director of the Brown Arts Institute. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. So I'm so happy that we are now having our second Brown Arts Forum, which we began yesterday. And this will be an ongoing series where we really look at the sort of looking back, looking forward, looking back at the history of the arts at Brown, and then also looking forward to some of the exciting things that we will be investigating, experimenting with, doing all kinds of wonderful conversations going forward. So stay tuned. But I'm going to very quickly turn this over to our wonderful professors who are going to give some presentations and some remarks about their time here at Brown, which continues on, which is wonderful. And then we'll have a little bit of a moderated conversation at the end of that. We may or may not have time for questions, but please do think of them, and we'll see where we get to at the end of the hour. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Richard.
We're going to start with a video that was produced to introduce the people who had supported the Grand Arf Center, to understand more what the ideas were that propelled that initiative. And we interviewed various faculty who participated in the ideas that created the program of the center. So the building was built, but it hadn't really been used. We can start to play that.
There's a lot of conversation between media and live performance, from my perspective anyway, and it's not one or the other, but they're in conversation.
What do people mean by collaboration? What do they mean by interdisciplinary?
Comparative literature, when literary arts comes into contact with environmental sciences, new possibilities appear, and those possibilities stretch who we are.
Because it's not just saying that we shouldn't be comfortable, but the emphasis on the idea of becoming, again, leaning out of our comfort zones into possibilities.
Seeing possibilities of putting at the center of Brown's campus this, luminous pulsing node that's undefined, but emphasizing collaboration and creativity, seeing that those are the diastolic and systolic beats of Brown University.
And say to the world, we trust the creative process. And if we put people together and make it open, great things will happen.
Brown students that come to campus with incredible goals and aspirations, and they're just going to hit the ground running in this place.
My hope is to never do anything that I would have done somewhere else. To constantly let the building talk to me, create new methodologies and new disciplines in this building, just because of the fact that we're all here at the same place.
What we want to keep alive inside the building as we use the spaces is the open, unknowable question of possibility.
Richard Fishman has been great about shaking the dust out of our ears and reminding us again and again about the future implied. And it's not meant to be a museum of anything. It's not meant to perpetuate anything. It's meant to move and move and move.
we don't really know where it's going to go, which is, to me, so exciting. This is a 21st century revolutionary building.
This place is a place that can inspire, because for every student that gets excited, that gets inspired about doing something with passion, they leave this place, and they affect the whole sphere around them. So this is an aggregator, a multiplier of opportunities for the world. To be part of that, this is an amazing gift.
So the question is, how did that happen? It happened because of a group of faculty came together over a period of years and evolved an idea, a vision. That vision was, in my mind, and I think it's shared by my colleagues, spawned by the new curriculum. It was 1969. I came here in 1965. I came here to teach, not to be a student. And in 65, everything was pretty small in the arts at Brown. Say that again? The art department was in a garage on Brook Street. The theater department was in the English department. And dance, as you heard, well, I thought it was in a gymnasium. It was quite modest. Thank you. The 60s, you know what it was like. I don't know how many of you were adults in the 60s, probably just us, Julie and I. But we really weren't adults. In 69, when the new curriculum was started by two students, which is also one of the most inspirational ideas, but they didn't need the idea given to them. They came up with the idea. A student came up to me in my class and said, we're inviting Timothy Leary to campus. He wants to talk about all of the robots that are here and why they need LSD. Will you be on the panel? And I said, listen, I've never even smoked those funny cigarettes that you're smoking in my garage. But I said yes. So we're on the panel. He gives his big speech about why everyone needs acid, and for all good reasons. And then we had a chance to talk. And so a doctor was on there, and the doctor was talking about the conservative things that one needs to think about if you're a doctor. And then I spoke. And I started talking about getting high on life. And that was true. I didn't need it. Leary looked at me and he said, okay, Fishman, you're right. You don't need it. But the rest of you robots do. So to me, that was like the 60s. It was more than that. Well, the Brown, the arts at Brown at that time, going into the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, they started to get some support from the administration. Money was tight, and the art departments, all of the departments, had a struggle for everything. But little by little, they had support, they grew, and they hired great faculty. And the faculty, the artists thought with only a little, we can do a lot. And so the fact that we weren't getting as much as some of our colleagues in other departments, it didn't stop anyone. Everyone worked as much as possible, and we combined our teaching. And I guarantee you that the enthusiasm for teaching was shared by all of them. At the same time, they all had professional lives as artists in their field, and they worked hard on that. So the quality of the work at Brown was really great. So I say nothing bad about those years. Those were good years. But it was very slow and incremental. Julie was upset, as some of us were, with why we weren't getting a larger piece of the pie. And so she organized a group of faculty chairs to try to form some kind of mission and clue the university administration into the fact that more needed to be done. And more was done, and she could expand on that if that is of interest. But we went forward. The next pivotal thing that occurred was the Creative Arts Council. That council was the next step in how do we get the university to support the arts in a bigger way. And I had some experience in the art department where I created a Friends of the List Art Center because we weren't getting enough money. And why were the art historians getting more money than we were? You know why. So academics, you know, the arts in institutions like this were very slow to get approval. So the Creative Arts Council was made up of the chairs of all of the arts departments, and we started to formulate plans for how we could integrate the quality of work being done in the different arts, where we took on different approaches to ask the question of what art is, and how can we expand the conversation. That was going on in the wider world. So we started to do that in a more strategic way. We also put together a advisory committee, because I learned from my former experience with the visual art department that an advisory committee helps. So I went to the provost and I said, okay, so we have this group of faculty that have come together and we want to expand our possibilities and we'd like to create an advisory committee. And the provost said to me, no, I don't think so. And I said, well, why not? And she said, because you will just use it as a excuse for getting people to give more money. And I said, I promise I won't do that. So, but she still didn't approve it. So she left her job and another provost came in and was ready to accept the idea. And so this person allowed us to have an advisory committee. And we had to find a chair of the advisory committee that could do the things that advisory committees are asked to do, which basically is to make things happen. Because you can't make things happen on a prayer and a hope. You have to have some money. So I was introduced to Marty Granoff. Actually, we were at BAM, and I was sitting next to his wife, who was an advocate and a supporter of dance. And I said to Perry, Perry, do you think that Marty would take a position as the head of an advisory committee? And she said, I hope he will, because I want him out of the house. So he did accept it, and Artie was fantastic. And at the first meeting of the advisory committee, he said to everyone, I want to tell you folks something. The potential at Brown is huge. I'm going to tell you that Brown is going to be the destination point for arts in higher education. Look how close we are to that thing. Now I see, and I felt at that time that we had a miracle on Angel Street. And now the Lindemann is another miracle on Angel Street. Lightning can strike twice. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie. So I just want to, I'm going to show you a video. I just want to briefly tell you what it is. I think as you saw in the video that Richard just showed, I said, I want to do things in this building, talking about the ground off, that I've never done before. And so one of the things I did was offer a course called Under One Roof. It was before the building was even quite finished. I think they were going through the punch list. But I really wanted to bring together students from different disciplines and also particularly performing artists who traditionally basically we use our bodies in space and time. We bring in technology at some point, but basically the building was being touted at this place where technology was going to be so powerful, and there were music students already using technology and visual artists. So I wanted to really explore the building as just a space. I've often said that if I weren't a dancer, I would be an architect, because I think the relationship between the human body and space is incredible, and how you move through that space. And it is a building that allowed for multiple ways of experiencing it and seeing space. It's I'm sure all of you have been in the building, but the glass walls, and it's visible from the outside. So sometimes we took over the whole. I did another program with American Dance Legacy initiative that I founded here, that it was at the John Nicholas Brown Center, and we took over the whole building. It's great to be around when things are new, because nobody quite knew what to do anyway. So I said, I want the whole building, and they gave it to me. So we did installations in all the living rooms. We did performances. We used the Englander as a skybox to watch performances, and people could have popcorn and they could talk. And I mean, it was just like, and we also did performances and said, okay, if the outside can see, let's not pretend this is a proscenium theater with walls. We've got that already at Fon's House, so we left the windows open. So this is, and there's just one other thing you're going to see. We did a piece that was inspired by sculptures of Michelangelo that used circles with the arms because all the arms were missing. And there was a dance. Then we had sculptors come and look at the dance, students from RISD, and they made a sculpture based on what they saw in the dance, and then we had dancers respond to the sculpture. So we had Michelangelo talking to new students, talking to new dancers. So I'll point that out when it comes up, but this is just people exploring the Grand Opera.
Never gone past this window before.
Both from inside and out, obviously. This is the alley between Churchill House and, which is now, looks different. This is fun to, this is one of the living rooms.
Do we go in?
This is one of those really small studios. And this is the sculpture that was inspired by the dance that was inspired by Michelangelo. And this is a very confined space also, so and people had to kind of discover it and find it and peek in. And then we experimented with doing video games and projecting on the building itself from the outside. So this is the green that would now be between the Lindemann and the Granoff. So we did use technology. I'm not anti-technology, but it wasn't the only thing. So they're playing a video game here where they're actually activating the actors that are up in the they're in the windows at the Englander.
Oh, that's just what they do when they win.
This is one of the installations. This one is actually in honor of Abbott Gleason, who had Parkinson's, was also an artist. Oh, I can't talk that fast. This is our using. Most people are either part of our DAPPERS class, which is Dance for Our Aging Population, or part of the Dance for PD class. Those are students from Central Falls High School. They look down here, and we look up there, and then they'll all come down. And these are people from the DAPPERS class. They're doing an adaptation of a repertory etude that was created by Donald McHale about chain gangs in the American South. And this is the end of a performance in the Fishman studio. So you can see the windows are completely open. And the people from the ground could see the dancers, but also the people in the house were also aware that there was a world around us. We did these mini-fests for 7 years, taking over, doing various themes. And the whole building was built around whatever theme we were doing. This is a piece about George Sand, who was, most of you know, she was a poet dressed as a man so that she could be accepted. And she was also Chopin's lover. And we did a piece, this piece was done about her, and they start out in suits. And by the end, they've taken off their shirts and they show that they're, and it's all done to Chopin piano music. So that's the, just wanted to give you a little sense of sort of how I did this. You can put the next slide on. This is a photo of the, the founding faculty of the Theater Arts Department. It's Jim Harnhill, John Amy, me, Don Wilmuth, Barbara Tannenbaum, and George Bass, and John Lucas. I just want to take a second to introduce, of all the people here, John and I and Barbara are the only ones that are still alive. And John Amy is still kicking up his heels. He's in Germany right now. He couldn't be here. I was just saying in the green room, we either are kicking our heels up or we're dead. We don't just go calmly into the night. But I would like to introduce Barbara Tannenbaum, who is here and very much alive and still teaching, and one of the most esteemed and current respected faculty. I mean, everybody who's had anything to do with Brown knows her. And I also, when I came in, I saw Eileen Landay. I wasn't going to initially mention her, but she's another one of these incredible, distinguished Emerita. She's in the English education department. And just I wanted to briefly talk about what I think about as the legacy of the faculty that helped create the arts at Brown. And certainly had a lot to do with the new curriculum, because not only did it set the students free, but it set the faculty free to really explore and experiment. And there were very few rules. As I said, joked to people, from the minute I was a part of this, I noticed the university starting to freak out. What have we done? We have dumped 17-year-olds in the pool, in the deep end of the pool with the faculty. And they started throwing us ropes. It was benign at first. It starts to be a little, but they were smart. I mean, what do you do? But it was incredible what you do when you are truly at risk in the deep end of the pool. That's when your creativity comes out. So while I think we were a special group of people and lucky to be here, we were also lucky that I think a lot of people have that creativity when they're given that sort of edge of having to survive. And so, we also needed each other in a way. There was very little siloing. John Lucas was the tech director, but he was also had a PhD in music, and he was directing musicals, and so there were. And one time I had to run the light board because, so we were all in it together. Collaboration was organic. We worked with scientists. I did a piece with Tom Banchoff about the fourth dimension, and we created this piece together about what would it be like to have to live in a two-dimensional world and experience the three-dimensional world, all through dance and music. Those kind of things were organic, because we all, so I'm interested in thinking about how we keep that sense of that almost danger and risk as we're getting safer and safer. And that's just a question that I'd love to, have us talk and think about, that the relationship between creativity and structures and sort of trusting. I think one of the other things I said in the video was you have to trust the creative process. That's really challenging. So I open that up to conversation. The last person I want to show is Bob Reichley. How many people know who Bob Reichley is? Not enough. And the reason I'm talking about him in particular, and that's not a criticism of you, Bob Reichley came to Brown in 1968, right about the time of the new curriculum. I'm bringing him up because he, outside of the arts, represents that kind of energy that we all had at that time. He came as originally as the editor of BAM. He was created the first university relations department. And it had to do with, he did university relations, media, alumni relations, community, government and general public relations, external communications, and major university events and special programs. We now have, I think, 3 or 4 offices that do this. The thing that's interesting about having one person have the bird's eye view of everything is that he could see where alumni relations connected to the faculty, connected to other events. He had a quote where he said, whenever they were talking about an event, he would always say, what about the alumni? What about the faculty? The faculty are the first people that the students are connected to. We have to continue to build that relationship. Then when you get separate, I'm not, again, saying we shouldn't have some kind of bureaucracy, but what happens? The person with the large vision is no longer overseeing connections. I think we need people with circular thinking that can see the connections between things that are happening over here and over there. And I think that's the challenge that, so he was a groundbreaking person, and I wanted to bring him up for that reason. But the other reason I really want to talk about him today is that he loved music. And I knew Bob really well. I did a lot of events with him. His daughter danced with me in the dance company. And his son recalled he loved music and was especially proud of the program he set up that brought internationally known musicians to play with the Brown Orchestra. Dad remembered with great fondness watching Rostropovich play Frisbee with students between rehearsals. And I know that there's reasons for naming things, and it has to do with money, but somehow Bob Reichley should be recognized for his contribution to music, and he dreamed of having a music hall, a concert hall, from the time I knew him. And we were dashed hopes every once in a while, oh, we're gonna put a music hall here, oh, a concert hall, and then it was dashed. It almost broke his heart over and over and over. So I want to acknowledge him in particular, and to just suggest that we find a way to have everybody know who he was, and that this was a dream of his to have the Brown musicians be able to play with, like we saw last night and we'll see tonight, with world-class musicians and these 20-year-old students. What a privilege they have, and he would be so proud and so happy. So I want to sort of dedicate this, my last thoughts, to Robert Reichley. And I posed this picture because this is Bob in action, always communicating. He was a high communicator, dealt with the merger of Brown and Pembroke, and he said he almost had blood on his, That was a very fractious merger. It's very calm now, but it was fractious at the time. He was there when the students were rebelling. He was always out in front of the press, never hid from anything. So he's a great man, and you should all know him. Thank you.
Hello there. Thanks for being here today. To wake up this computer, just give me a second here. I want to thank Avery and her team for organizing this, and thanks to Richard and Julie. It's fantastic to kind of think of the history of the arts at Brown. And my part, as soon as it appears there, let's see. Yes, so I want to talk about the history of the Brown Arts of Brown, but particularly about the Brown Arts Initiative, with which I was involved in the making of the building across the walk there. So as Julie and Richard made clear, by the time Christina Paxson became president, the idea of building on the strength of the arts of Brown to become a more urgent priority. Of course, it was urgent for decades, but it eventually became more urgent, and we finally had some movement thanks to President Paxson and her team. But I think the underlying thing that has come across here is that really the students are the driving force. So here are some important facts via 3 numbers: 60%, 1,500, and 31. So 60% is the number of undergraduate applicants to Brown who come to Brown or apply to Brown expressing a strong desire to participate in the arts, whether or not they concentrate in the arts. 1,500 then, once they're here, is the number of students who are served annually in all of the arts departments collectively. So every year, about 1,500 or more students come through every department from every corner of campus, concentrators and non-concentrators alike. So it's a huge arts ecosystem. And wonderful thing is students are connecting their creative passion to everything they do on campus, in the classroom and out of the classroom. 31 is the number of different concentrations represented on the orchestra roster, at a particular moment in time, and it varies, of course, but who knows, this may be even more now, but it's amazing to think of the number of different kinds of concentrators who are in the orchestra, from anthropology to applied math, to Slavic studies, to visual arts, and of course, music. So based on this robust participation of students in the arts became a really urgent priority for the new administration. And that was most concretely demonstrated in the Building on Distinction Strategic Plan for Brown, which came out in 2013. And this, in the plan, what was amazing is the very first theme is cultivating creative expression, which aspires to foster an environment in which artists operate at the highest levels, learn from and inform scholars and disciplines across the campus. So this was the very first theme expressed in Brown's new strategic plan. And from that, a strategic priority emerged, which is we need new or renovated spaces for academic needs in the creative and performing arts. And from that, there was this desire to create a new governance structure for the arts, which became the Brown Arts Initiative, the precursor to the Brown Arts Institute. And this does build on the work that Richard had done with the Creative Arts Council. And so from that, there was a set of working groups that ultimately recommended this new governance structure, and it became the Arts Initiative. And then you'll see this play out as I kind of go through the story of the Brown Arts Initiative and that new building that kind of run in parallel here. So as we're thinking about the governance structure, we are starting to already work on the building. And so the summer of 2014, we worked with a group called Sasaki Associates to think of some hypothetical ideas of what this thing might look like, but more importantly, where should this building be? That was a big question. Where should the building be? And one of the big constraints was that it should be within what's called the 10-minute walk circle. So from the center of campus, you should be able to walk to all the most important parts of campus within 10 minutes. So that became the constraint of where could this go. And you can see there are 5 sites that were kind of on the whiteboard at that moment. There was the walk south, the walk north, which we are now. There was a space on Thayer Street, something on Brook Street, which is now, I think, the Wellness Center. And also even Pembroke Field was considered for a while. So these were sites that were under consideration. So that was the first part, thinking, okay, where could this be? Then, as still that's kind of ruminating, we start to work with a group called ARUP. They're an architectural consulting group. And we start to work on the concept for this building. So, after where should it be, what kind of building should this be? What should it do? And so early on, ARUP came up with this concept, which is still with us in the Lindemann. I think it's really, really remarkable to kind of think that the genesis is quite a long time ago, that they came up with this idea that given the number of needs in the arts, and we're going to build one building, this building needs to serve many different constituencies, and how can you do that? And one of the things was we knew always from the beginning that the litmus test for this building was that it needed to be a world-class space for orchestral performance. That's something that's been needed for decades and decades. But it also needed to do all these other things. And so the idea was that it would be an orchestral type place married with an experimental type place where you could move and change and do all sorts of things. And that would actually yield something new. It's this hybrid building that doesn't really exist anywhere. And that was this original idea that Arup kind of proposed, and we all thought, of course, this is amazing. You know, it would be top-tier acoustic combined with dirty experimental space. And through this, Arup then also identified that you'd have this flexible building that could do a lot of things, but it did have to do at least a number of things really well. It had to provide for orchestra performance, dance, of course, had to do multimedia, had to do theater, of course, and it had to allow for this experimental mode of trying different things. Wonderful thing about working with Arup was that it was very sophisticated. They had a whole modeling system where they could model this hall, you know, this early version of the hall. And not only could they 3D model it visually, but they could 3D model it acoustically, so that we could actually kind of sit in this imaginary hall and hear what it would sound like from different places in the room. And that was a really important step in the process, because a lot of people in music had to be convinced that if you weren't going to build a purely orchestral, you know, kind of hall, could it still sound good? And their modeling showed that even with all the experimental moving aspects of it, it could sound really fantastic. And so we did that modeling, and then they actually came up with a set of kind of, you know, presets in a sense for what this thing, it would be movable, but these would be some of the different configurations. It could do a large orchestra configuration, and you'll see up here that a little bit like the Lindemann, but a different kind of technique, but like the Lindemann, the walls will move here so that the back wall kind of moves in for the chamber orchestra version. The seats move out, the rake changes for dance. The proscenium arch comes down, the back wall moves back for theater. There's a kind of multimedia version with screens, and there's also the immersive version where things come in and there's screens all around. So that was an early concept that survived through various permutations into what we have in the Lindemann now. But now in the process, we are in 2015, and it does become clear that we need to have a more focused concept of what this building was for and what it would do, and get very specific about it. So that did finally lead to a strategic planning process for the arts, specifically for the arts, and this was in 2016. And you can see this as a fleshing out of the original theme and the cultivating creative expression theme from the original Brown's strategic plan. Here we're fleshing that out specifically for the arts. And this was the collaboration of all the arts departments and affiliated programs like Rights and Reason Theater and Bell Gallery. And from this planning process, this actually gave birth to the Brown Arts Initiative. Again, the Brown Arts Initiative is like the prototype for the Brown Arts Institute. Within the initiative, this included these departments: history of art and architecture, literary arts, modern culture and media, music, theater arts and performance studies, visual arts, David Whitten Bell Gallery, and Rights and Reason Theater. And our goal was to make Brown the leading university for experimental arts practice and education. And that's why the sort of mission statement that we developed was experiment, collaborate, and engage. And so that was our driving mission, and kind of motivated us in several different ways. Once we had this plan, we expanded from thinking about the building to thinking what could happen in the building. And very much like a design thinking exercise, we were not just going to theorize, we were going to actually iterate. And so the idea really was to test different kinds of programming before the Lindemann actually existed, but tested in this building, the Granoff, and experiment with different kinds of programming. What could a performing arts building possibly support? So we developed a programming season. We produced about over 150 different programs, including performances, installations, lectures and symposia, screenings, exhibitions, and workshops. Here's a little snapshot of kind of our season brochures. So that's from 2017-18, fall 2018, spring 2019, fall 2019. And just to give you a little flavor of what we were doing, I made a few very short compilation videos to give you a sense of the range of what we were testing. The first one is just a little snapshot of events featuring our wonderful professors of the practice. These were new positions that we created that would bring cutting-edge artists to campus for a semester to teach. And I think I understand that Kate Burton is doing one of those, right, this semester, right? So this was the beginning of the professor of the practice model. And here are some of them in action. So that was Romel Ross, Sebastian Ruth. We have Ralph Lemon, choreographer. Ali Mameni, who's a kind of a AI person. And Ann Waldman, an amazing poet and performer. Andrew Snyder, an interactive media artist and performer, developing a project with students. And also here are a few highlights from our lecture and performance series. We have Nick Cave in conversation, Thelma Golden, Rina Banerjee, Wangechi Mutu, Shirin Nishad, an amazing filmmaker, tiny little snapshot of one of her films. Christine Sun Kim, sound artist, Julia Atiko from Nigeria, Edgar Arsenault's Until. International Contemporary Ensemble, Krakauer and Tag. So a few little things that we're doing. You know, it was interesting, like Edgar Arsenault's performance, we only had, small spaces here to work with, and it was amazing what the Granoff crew were able to do with the Fishman studio upstairs to kind of squeeze his piece into that space. Also, this is a project that was very near and dear to my heart. This is the songwriting series that we started, featuring concerts and master classes from well-known singer-songwriters. And as a songwriter myself, this was one of my babies, this particular project. So we have the Weepies doing concert and master classes with students, Roseanne Cash, John Leventhal, Kishi Bashi, Aaron McCoon, and then Chachi Carvalho, and Tank and the Bangas. Yeah, Tank and the Bangas, they were amazing. They won NPR's Tiny Desk Concert competition. So along with that, we were doing symposia. We had a 3-year period theme of arts and the environment, and so this is one of the symposia, 2017, React to Arts and Environment. We did a couple other things in April 2018 around climate change, polar opposites and weatherproof, and then finally the third symposium was the Art, Land, and Justice one in September 2019. So all this was happening, we're testing out the programming, but of course, at the same time, we're also working on the building. So it was this really kind of interesting, like, parallel streams. Like, the building's happening, we're trying programming. But I want to go back to the building now to just talk about what happened next. This was the site that was approved in 2017. I'll get back to this in a second. You might notice that it's actually not where the building is right now. So there's a whole story behind that one. That's a big story. But that was the site that was approved. And then we went on to hire Rex as the architects, and they were been an amazing team to work with. They clearly stood out in a field of internationally known firms. They were particularly chosen amongst all their talents, but because they designed this theater in Dallas called the Wiley Theater that has movable balconies. And this, in a sense, is a prototype for the kind of technology that they amplified in the Lindemann, a much more dramatic version of it in a Lindemann. But this has the ability to change size and shape as well, this Wiley Theater in Dallas. So once Rex was chosen, they came to campus. We had many open sessions with faculty and students and staff, gaining input from what people would think the building should be. And it was really a wonderful process as they kind of tried to solidify the design of the building on the proposed site. However, the site. This original site required movement or demolition of existing historic buildings, and it required the relocation of some academic departments. And what's really interesting, if you look carefully here, I think my cursor shows up. Let's see. I'm not sure if I can show my cursor. Well, you can see it there. The bus tunnel runs under that. That's right. So that was a site that was available, but it had this really complicated enabling aspect that the bus tunnel went underneath the space. So there are lots of reasons this wasn't the ultimate space, and Brown, ultimately the city actually rejected this site. So it was proposed, the city rejected it, and that was January 2018. So we went back to the drawing board and submitted a proposed site, and this is the one that you are familiar with now. And just to kind of make it clear, this is the original site. It moves across the street here. And now you'll see in the middle of the site there's a building, that's Sharp House, and that actually, there's the one building in this particular version that needed to be moved, and it ends up being moved up there next to the other house with history, and they're joined, and that actually ended up being better for history in the end anyway. But the interesting thing about this is that the building was originally horizontally organized, and you see the bus tunnel, and it moves across the street, and it has to become vertically organized. And so there's this whole issue of going below grade, and you're going to be digging down. And since you're digging down, there's cost depending on how far you dig down, how much you're going to do there. And so there were 3 different options, the small, medium, and large. Like how much are you going to dig? And if you look, you can see that the bottom one doesn't really give you any kind of rehearsal spaces below grade. The middle one gives you 1 rehearsal space for kind of large orchestral rehearsal. The top one gives you acting, dance, and music. And you can guess which one we went with. You have to go with the large one. And just credit to everyone in Brown's administration for agreeing that that was the way to go. I have a little set of videos here that show what this building will do, and you can see the below grade parts of it. And this is the way that the building moves and changes its configuration into these different formats. So that's the cube configuration, or experimental media. This is the recital configuration. And the recital is very similar to the orchestra configuration, but the walls are actually narrower for kind of a smaller number of players. The end stage configuration, it changes and allows for a kind of a proscenium. So that's the end stage or theater configuration. And then the orchestra configuration, which some of you maybe heard last night in that amazing concert, this is what that looks like. And notice that everything's changing. The walls change, the rake of the seats are changing, the ceiling sonic absorbers and deflectors change. Everything is like part of a whole system. And finally, the flat floor configuration, which just kind of opens it all out to one large flat thing. So finally, in February 2019, we officially revealed the design, that was going on, and that was kind of presented to the wider world, the design. And then things could actually start happening. We kept working on the schematic drawings, and preparation of the site began. The first thing of which involved moving Sharp House, as you saw on that one slide. This is kind of amusing, short little video of the house moving, which is remarkable. I mean, that they could actually do this. So Sharp House moved, and then we were able to start digging. So that's the beginning of the hole there for the building. So that's spring of 2019 after the thaw. And then so this is starting spring 19, going through 19, and then in the winter of 2020, we all know what happened. The world came to a halt during the pandemic. However, construction continued, which is amazing. So all through this, the construction continued. We had the topping off ceremony in December of 2020. This is just kind of a drone shot from that, kind of a flyover. But December 2020, we were already at that stage. And then we finally have the building. The building was officially named the Lindemann Performing Arts Center because of Lindemann's extremely generous lead gift. That was May 2022. And the building had its soft open this last spring where we were doing these kind of tuning, adjusting events. And finally, last night, the incredible inaugural concert. So I want to end with a little video that I made it's kind of symbolizes the kind of incredible journey involving hundreds and hundreds of people over many years. It's a brief video that I actually made for the design reveal. So it mentions this has been a 2-year process because that's when we revealed the design. There are several more years after that. But this is a video that tries to capture the collaborative spirit of this incredible endeavor and what it means for the arts at Brown.
It takes a village to realize a vision. The performing arts at Brown will never be the same because of the work of a dedicated community of students, faculty, staff, administrators, and trustees, working together with the finest team of design professionals. The almost 2-year effort has led to an outcome none of us could have imagined before we started. Experimental, collaborative, engaged. That's the power of the arts at Brown.
Thank you very much.
Well, I know I learned a lot. I hope everyone else learned a lot. So we've heard so much about the history. I'm really curious about what you're dreaming for the future. What are you thinking about in this moment? It is October 2023. We just opened the Lindemann. It was dedicated by the Chancellor on Thursday. We have a weekend of opening concerts, all the visions that you've each laid out. What next? What are you dreaming about as the bridge to the next era? What are you dreaming about?
I think I'll just quickly say I just looked through the programs of what's coming up, the Impact series.
Ignite.
Ignite, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just so fabulous. They're bringing in these artists to work with the students and to work. And I think what I would like to see is that, what I tried to allude to, is the extraordinary faculty that we have that are mentoring. The role of being an artist mentor, educator is slightly different from having a life as a practicing artist without anything else. I mean, not that artists aren't holistic. And the legacy of the arts at Brown are this faculty, the arts faculty, but all the faculty, and the fact that the focus we put on undergraduates, that there are undergraduate students at Brown that are doing things that are usually reserved for grad students in most institutions, and it's a very rare to have. I mean, I've just never known a dedicated faculty like this that spends so much time. So to figure out, that no matter how much money there is, there's going to be limited resources, how they get distributed between bringing in people from the outside and nurturing what we already have, and not just giving lip service to building on the past, because we're out of here, but there are still young existing faculty who are just like we were, who need that support to be artists in this. And the students need that too. I mean, I just want to add that I added a course at Brown called Dance Styles, because we have a small faculty, and I brought in guest artists to teach a class that is similar, because I wanted people, they don't want to teach in a university. They have careers, they're independent artists, and they came in to do exactly what they know how to do and bring that to the students. And I see this as but I still had a lot I was the one that would come back and say, this is what this means to you. This is how you can connect to this person. This is your path, and they're not meant to do that. They're going to come, so I would really like to see us understand that sort of synergetic role between the existing faculty and the guests that come in. As I said about the guy, I don't know what's going to happen. Like I've always said that. We don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be great. We just know it's going to be good. That's all.
Yeah, Richard.
I have a comment along those ideas, which is what I hope to see is that we don't lose the essence of who we became. When we start to expand and we start to have opportunities to do many different things technically, sometimes we lose sight of what made it happen in the beginning, which was the intensity and collaboration among the people who were there. And I hope that the faculty continue to have their ideas accepted, that there's room for them, and that the students are not lost in the process.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think what's wonderful about the collaborative process is that it's quite messy, and there are many of ideas that maybe aren't good, but that's part of the whole process. So you really want that sort of just open table where everything's can come out, and then things just happen. It's not a straight line, actually. That's the tricky, and that's why you need the long haul vision. But I also totally agree about the students. I think the students are the ones that drive it all here.
And we can't be too precious, because one of the most important things is the idea that you can fail.
Yeah.
And you can then bounce back.
Right.
And if everything is designed in a way that it has to be perfect, and we know it can't be,
right,
you lose sight of the opportunity to relax.
I'm writing notes.
I know my students are incredibly excited about the building, and they keep asking about, what can they do in there, when can they get there? So I think there's a huge amount of interest and creative energy, like waiting to explode in there.
Absolutely.
Can someone tell us about the Ignite series?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you can go online and read a lot about the Ignite series. I can just very briefly say that when I first started in November 2020, a long listening tour, and many of the things that you've said over the course of this last hour, I heard about, some directly from some of you. And what I loved about Brown immediately with the layers of participation in the arts, the student layer, the faculty layer, the departmental layer, the Providence layer, the relationships that were really built, many of the programs that each of you were doing, connecting with artists in Providence, and that visiting artist layer. And so Ignite is literally built on that concept. You will see across the next 14 months and hopefully beyond, an amplification of each of those layers. So each of the arts departments are offering stunning projects, in the next year, resources given directly to them to think about how they might imagine this next step, this next phase in this amazing new building, in concert with this building, in concert with buildings across campus. So yes, we have a new building, but we have this rich history. We have many spaces across campus that we can activate, and we can activate them at different scales. So Ignite is also about scale. There are some really small, beautiful, intimate projects. There are some very large campus-wide projects. And so you can go to arts.brown.edu and start to discover what Ignite is going to be. But it's also evolving, and to kind of acknowledge that we are in an evolving state of things right now in every part of our lives, of course, and that the arts can be responsive and can exist in these different modes, that we are not baked into a kind of presenter style of providing content and art, right? Which is sort of every weekend there's a different exciting thing happening. We're actually dwelling in these different layers, and students work at a different mode and pace than faculty. Departments work at a different mode and pace than visiting artists who might need time to really dig in and experiment and fail. And where the magic is where the layers cross. And so we're really excited to have all of these different facilities and incredible collaborators. I mean, that has been the sort of the ingredients of the recipe, or the collaborative spirit among students. Wonderful collaborations happening with RISD, like really organically with RISD, for example. So just trying to amplify those layers and those opportunities, and acknowledge, which is why I'm so happy to start with this particular conversation, to really acknowledge that the history is deep. All the folks that you've uplifted across this hour, they're with us and they live with us, and they have helped build this deep foundation that we're now just moving forward through. So, stay tuned.
Do I have time to say one more thing?
Yeah, go for it.
We're talking about the community and being part of the Providence community, and I would like to see that wall more two-way. Brown has a lot of walls around it. I don't know whether, historically, if you know, the original entrance to University Hall was on the quiet green side, and it was part of the community. And at some point, Brown turned, it's a symmetrical building, so it doesn't matter which door you come in. And they just sort of turned their back on the city. And if you look at the campus itself, it's a lot of walls. And even if you look at the athletic center, they put this sort of ugly red thing towards the... So I think there's some... I talked about architecture, that if we want to be part of the community, I think there are really some ways that we have to think about that. And I know from working in the community, there are a lot of people that have had really negative experiences with higher education, and with it, not just at Brown. A lot of people who work here inside of the staff and in the, food services, custodial, their community people do not necessarily feel part of, and this is not just an arts issue, although I think artists, because I think that's what we do, are the ones that can start to look at that. And some of it's simple. I wonder if we could have public art in the arts district, not the arts district, I mean, but in the community somewhere, where we do public, so you don't have to come into the campus to see public art. It seems to me that's sort of like almost simple. We could have the right to do that. And then maybe turn the door around. Just say, come in. there seems to me there could be simple ways to, and there's still a sense that we're kind of the smartest people in the room, you know, when you get the community in the room. And a lot of people in the community are really smart about, and know what they need and what, so to really make that dialogue an equal dialogue. Artists can do that too. I mean, that's why I'm bringing this up now. I don't think it's an administrative, I think it's a building. And those kids that I brought into the ground office Central Falls, they were terrified to come in the building. They said, they told their teacher, they stood outside and we had to drag them in. They walked into the Fishman studio and they saw Brown students laying the floors, because there were only 2 people to run the building. So I was laying marley and moving furniture, and they said to the teacher, we thought it was easy to get into Brown. They work hard. I work hard. I could go to Brown. And they started coming here every year. They started telling, and this is Central Falls High School. These are first-generation immigrant kids, some of whom didn't speak English, started to take ownership of this building. They curated some of those living rooms. They did a whole installation at the Center for the Study of Slavery and Justice on chain gangs, and they did that dance that we were talking about. They did an installation, and then they were the curators and the docents and told people from the Brown community what this exhibit had done. That's community engagement, and it's right, and they're out there, and we just have to let them in, and the arts can do that. So that would be my hope from that the next year I see that we have that real connection to the community that's not noblesse oblige, but a real communication.
Yeah.
So we'll pause there because the conversation will continue over many years, I hope. We will do a little reception just outside the auditorium here. So if any folks have questions, we'll be out there for a little bit, and please feel free. But thank you all for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.